Incredible discovery, billionaire uncovers surprising truth about black girl digging in his garden. Walter Jennings knelt in the damp earth, the air fragrant with the scent of blooming roses. Each petal was a buffer against the sharp edges of a life spent navigating the relentless machinations of Silicon Valley. Peace, he thought, was a garden well tended. But that calm was shattered by the sound of a spade knocking against something solid nearby. He turned, brow furrowed, to see a young black girl digging fervently in his garden, dirt flying as she worked with a rusted spade. "What on earth are you doing?" he called out, irritation seeping into his voice. She looked up, her brown eyes bright with determination. "I'm looking for my grandma's old stuff. She used to work here," she said, a note of pride in her otherwise breathless response. Walter felt disbelief wash over him. He dismissed her efforts as naive, an absurd fantasy clashing with the practicality of his world. But something in her eyes lingered, a fierce spark, a history he found hard to ignore. Who was she to dare dream amongst his manicured gardens? As she continued digging, unflinching, he felt an unexpected wave of empathy swell within him. In that moment, his mind burst with memories, buried dreams of his own childhood, aspirations clouded by the weight of wealth and familial expectations. It was a connection he had long buried. "Do you really think you'll find anything?" he questioned, but the words felt hollow. Behind his mask of skepticism, a deeper part of him, a facet of his soul he thought he had abandoned, began to stir. Maya's resilience resonated, reflecting his past. The injustice of it struck him. This girl, digging for scraps of her history, represented a courage he had seldom encountered in the glass towers of his career. As days turned into weeks, the tension in Walter's life escalated. His family, citizens of privilege in an insulated bubble, began to express their unease. His wife's skepticism grew into full-blown aversion. She wore her distrust like armor. "We can't have her around, Walter. It puts everything at risk," she voiced, her voice taut, echoing through the airy rooms of their estate. Their teenage children snickered at the notion of befriending someone from a world they had never bothered to understand. He felt their cold indifference pierce through him, highlighting the unseen biases that had shadowed their lives. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. On a fateful afternoon, they unearthed a locket, intricate and beautiful, nestled with long-forgotten family photographs. As Walter opened it, his pulse quickened, the air crackling with palpable anticipation. Inside was a letter, the late grandmother's words encapsulating a lifetime of struggle, resilience, and love. The truth pressed heavy against him. He felt the weight of expectation from his family contorting around this revelation. Walter stood at a precipice, trapped between two worlds. The locket pressed against his palm like a metaphor for all he dared to confront: heritage, identity, and a chance to mentor. In this moment, he felt acutely alive, yet profoundly uneasy. Would he disturb his family's comfortable narrative? Would he dare to connect, to explore what could be shared? His heart raced as he looked at Maya, eyes filled with a blend of hope and uncertainty mirroring his own. The fragile connection hung between them, a lifeline to something deeper, a future that flickered with both promise and turmoil. The locket lay heavy in Walter's palm, an artifact filled with unspoken narratives. He stared at the handwritten letter, his thoughts racing. It sprouted ideas that entwined with the rich history of Maya's family and pierced through the apathy that had settled over his own, the futile pretenses of wealth, the parade of accomplishments that felt increasingly hollow. What would it mean to embrace this unexpected bond? Determined, he met Maya's gaze. "What if we worked together?" The sentence felt foreign, yet liberating. She blinked in surprise, grasping the significance of his words. "You'd help me?" she stammered, disbelief and hope illuminating her features. "Yes. I want to understand more to know your story. It was a raw admission, one that shattered the confines of his privileged existence and opened a door to authenticity. Maya's gaze dropped to the earth, excitement mixed with caution. He understood that her journey finding remnants of her grandmother's past was as much about personal legacy as it was about the thrill of discovery. Days turned into fervent work sessions. Walter became engulfed in the feverish digging, conversations flowing between snippets of history and dream fragments. As they unearthed old trinkets, a rusted pendant, worn utensils, he learned not only of Maya's lineage but gleaned insights into a resilience forged in hardship, drawing parallels to moments in his own life that felt long buried. Maya shared how her grandmother had forged a life from scraps, meticulously saving every penny to build a future. Walter, in turn, found himself recounting the weight of expectations that clung to him, the pressures pushing him into boardroom decisions that often felt disingenuous. Each revelation felt like a small revolution, reshaping his understanding of sacrifice and success. However, shadows lurked in the corners of his mind. The unsettling opposition from his family lingered like an unwelcome apparition. Each dinner at their large, formal table felt increasingly stifling, filled with thinly veiled commentary on his allegiance to Maya and their shared endeavor. His wife, Christine, continued to question his motives, her eyes narrowing at the choices he was making. "This is outrageous, Walter. You're being foolish," she would say, her tone straddling concern and contempt. Walter found himself at a moral crossroads, torn between the comfort of expected loyalty and the burgeoning relationship that had ignited a sense of purpose. The rift deepened, and the home that once felt safe now felt loaded with tension. While he appreciated his family's intentions and instinctual need for protection, a different kind of clarity emerged through Maya's grounded perspective. In their conversations, he felt more alive than ever, chasing a sense of fulfillment that was echoing from long-neglected corners of his soul. One late afternoon, as the sun cast golden hues on the garden, they made another discovery: an old journal buried alongside a twisted root. The leather was cracked, pages yellowed with time. Walter flipped through the fragile sections, each entry resonating with struggles and dreams, brushes with discrimination and glimpses of hope. It wasn't merely a lifeless artifact, it was a testimony, a call to action that resonated within him. What lay ahead was unclear, the path elusive yet enticing. Would he take the leap and share this transformation with his family? Or would he retreat to the safety of their expectations, ignoring what he now knew to be true? As he contemplated the implications of their discoveries, the urgency to make a decision surged within him, whispering promises of personal growth and confrontation with the past, a moment that would redefine everything for them both. In that charged environment, Walter tapped into a realization that filled him with both dread and exhilaration. "I have to show them," he said quietly, the words fragile yet potent. The uncharted waters ahead beckoned him, a path fraught with potential for confrontation. But the time had come to face the truth about who he wanted to become and what sacrifices that choice would demand. Walter stood at the precipice of change, the crackling weight of the journal in his hands grounding him as the sun began to set, casting residual warmth across his face. Echoes of past decisions, rich with the guilt of perceived privilege, churned in his gut. He had ventured into this alliance with Maya, and the discoveries they made together shimmered with fresh revelations about not just Maya's family but his own troubled psyche. Each day of collaboration was a new lesson. Maya's laughter and resolve shattered the barriers of his isolated world. It was during one of their sessions, surrounded by the earthy fragrance of soil and the mundane chatter of crows, that he grasped a pivotal truth. Maya was not just a means to rediscover someone else's history, she was a mirror reflecting parts of himself that he had long neglected. Her strength inspired him, her ability to confront the past prompted him to question his own choices, demonstrating to him that true legacy was shaped by relationships and shared histories rather than material accumulation. But at home, each glance from Christine felt like an unclaimed sword, poised for combat. It hadn't been easy to explain his late nights filled with artifacts and notes that shifted from performance markers to a deeper understanding of identity. The more he opened up about his work with Maya, the more he was met with skepticism veiled as concern. "You want to relay some narrative that doesn't belong to you, Walter," she had quipped over dinner, her voice sharp enough to cut through the delicate ambience. Her dismissive tone echoing in his mind was juxtaposed by more visceral conversations with Maya, one filled with vigor and an urgency to carve a future based on genuine connection. This chasm widened, feeding unresolved tensions he had hoped to avoid. The yearning to break free from expectations intensified, whispering promises of self-discovery. Each entry in the journal fleshed out the imagery of sacrifice, sweat, and the foundations of resilience. The juxtaposition of Maya's grandmother's struggles casting stark contrast to Walter's own gilded confinement. Could he risk losing what he had or gain a family that played a role in his story, one built through shared adversity and collaboration? One evening, fumbling through the tumult of his thoughts, Walter confronted Maya about what lay ahead. What if your search leads to something bigger than just a family story? What if uncovering the truth we seek redefines everything for both of us? He asked, his heart racing. Maya's brow furrowed, deep in thought. I think we need to understand the implications. Not just for us, Walter. What if this story brings to light aspects of our society that have long been hidden? The gravity of her words hung heavily in the air. It was not merely about legacy, this was about challenging narratives, about confronting historical injustices that bled into the very fibers of their lives. He began to see that their endeavor could branch beyond personal understanding. It could be a needed confrontation to society's silence. But that realization birthed yet another layer of complexity. Now there was more at stake. Walter felt the tightrope form beneath his feet. It demanded balance, collecting courage for the impending confrontation with his family, and the risk of being rejected for stepping into a narrative that, while personal, carried the weight of collective reckoning. Whatever the fallout may be, I think we owe it to her memory to confront the stories that need telling, Walter said, each syllable laced with growing conviction. The idea scared him, igniting fears of opposition yet tangling him in a web of necessity. What did it mean to bring the truth before those who would likely see it as a threat? The answers lay just out of reach, a storm brewing on the horizon. And as Walter steadied himself, a profound realization struck him. The discoveries thus far had altered the trajectory of his existence. It dawned on him that they weren't just excavating the past, they were carving the future. Uncertainty loomed large, but his resolve hardened. Walter was ready to take the next step, yet anticipation gnawed at him. How would he unveil this path to his family? In that charged heartbeat of silence, Walter knew their greatest challenge was still ahead, one he hadn't anticipated but ultimately could not shy away from. Would he summon the courage to face his truth head-on, as he had with Maya? The time had come to confront not only the stories buried in that journal but also those that were buried in the hearts of those he loved. Another weight pressed on his shoulders: either he would emerge transformed, or remain shackled to a legacy he never wanted. Walter's pulse thrummed in his ears as he stood at the door leading to his family's living room. The air was thick with the scent of Christine's signature casserole comfort food, yet it juxtaposed sharply with the storm of uncertainty brewing inside him. Each step felt monumental, like marching toward some opaque realization that would either free him or bind him tighter in a web of expectations. "Can we talk?" he managed, his voice barely rising above the din of the television, where a nightly news anchor droned on about yet another scandal. Christine turned, her expression unreadable. The habitual smile that often characterized their interactions was absent, replaced by a guarded look as if she sensed the weight of his intentions. "Sure, what's up?" she replied, tilting her head as if scrutinizing the cracks in his facade. Walter hesitated. He had rehearsed this moment over and over, mentally constructing an argument for why they needed to embrace change, yet here he was, grappling with the vulnerability it required. "It's about my project with Maya," he began, watching her brow furrow deeper. "Your project?" "Right." Christine's tone was sharp. "This is about uncovering a family narrative, isn't it? Something that doesn't exactly belong to you." The accusation pricked at him, resurfacing doubt he had tried to quell. "But that's just it. It's not just about a family story. It's about something larger, about addressing truths that have been ignored. Don't you see that?" Her eyes narrowed, skepticism tightening the corners of her mouth. And you think diving into that narrative is going to fix everything? You're not prepared for the fallout, Walter. You could be stepping on toes, stirring up things best left alone. The tension crescendoed, and Walter felt his spirit scramble for footing. Isn't that the point? To confront what's uncomfortable. To address the very narratives that shape our lives. If I don't take this leap, who will? We have an opportunity here, Christine, a chance to learn, to grow. For both of us. The silence thrummed between them, punctuated only by the distant clamor of the news. Each heartbeat pulsed with the weight of unspoken fears, both his and hers, a collision of ideals he could no longer ignore. You want to maintain the status quo, he challenged, daring to let frustration lace each word. But what about those truths that have lingered in the shadows? They deserve to be heard. She crossed her arms, a barrier now firmly erected. What do you think you're going to find in those stories? Sympathy. Redemption. Walter, you're risking everything on a gamble. You're sacrificing our stability for an unknown. Walter's breath caught. The very foundations of his life were being scrutinized, but it cut deeper, her dismissal of not just his project, but of him. How many times had he felt that uncomfortable tug in the pit of his stomach before? This wasn't merely a conversation, it was a confrontation with the very essence of who he was becoming. I'm prepared to risk it all if it means discovering who I truly am, he declared, the resolve firing in his chest. These stories, Maya's grandmother's struggles, they mean something. They teach me, challenge me, and you refuse to see that. Her gaze slid to the ground, tension visible in the rigidness of her shoulders. A moment passed, heavy with uncharted territory. At that moment, he confronted not only her disbelief but also the ache of his unfulfilled potential, one he feared had been shackled by his own complacency. Walter, sometimes ignorance is bliss. You can't save everyone, but you can certainly harm the ones you love. The sorrow in her voice took him aback, yet it instilled in him a fierce determination. Perhaps it's time someone challenged that ignorance, he countered softly, striving to pierce through the barrier. Maybe it's time we both confront our pasts, our stories. Those stories deserve recognition, Christine. The silence lingered, heavy with ramifications. His heart raced, grappling with the edges of possibility. Would she open her heart to his truth? Would she navigate through their history to embrace a future he envisioned? Or would he be left standing alone, watching the walls he'd built around his identity begin to crumble under the weight of her doubt? Each question spiraled deeper into his mind. As she finally lifted her gaze to meet his, Walter could feel the shift. It wouldn't be easy, but the encounter was just the beginning. A tempest of revelations lay ahead. What's next, Walter? She whispered, the uncertainty mingling with an unexpected curiosity, setting the stage for one final inquiry that could change everything. The storm clouds gathered, and Walter knew this was merely the first step toward redefining his reality. Walter stood in the gravity of Christine's question, his heart hammering against his ribs. The flickering light from the television cast shadows across the room, reflecting the tumult within him. What came next felt pivotal, as if he stood on the brink of a precipice ready to leap into unknown waters. I want to talk to Maya, he finally said, the words escaping him like air from a punctured balloon. I need to understand everything, her grandmother's story, the obstacles, the victories. It's essential to my research and to us, Christine. Christine's eyebrows shot up in disbelief, her arms tightening across her chest as if shielding herself from his audacity. You think just talking will give you insight? You're walking into an emotional minefield. Do you understand that? That's exactly why I need to do it, Walter replied, pressing on with his emerging conviction. I can't bear this uncertainty anymore. I've played it safe for too long, and now it feels suffocating. It's as if I've been wearing blinders, focusing only on the surface of my life. He could see a flicker of something in her eyes, perhaps recognition, or fear for him, yet she remained staunchly unyielding. And what makes you think that digging into someone else's pain will somehow bring clarity to your own life? She challenged, her voice steely. Walter's thoughts raced. Discovering Maya's grandmother's journey was about more than unraveling a narrative, it was about personal revelation. Half the point is not just to hear her story, but to acknowledge that my own experiences are steeped in a history of privilege. Unpacking that might illuminate something within me that's been lost in the triviality of my routine. This approach opened a doorway. Christine lowered her arms slightly, contemplating his words. He pressed forward, sensing the change. I can't hide behind this facade anymore, Christine. It's time I come to terms with how history shapes us all. But it can't just come from me. It needs to involve real voices, actual lived experiences. How do you expect to foster that connection? You don't simply insert yourself into someone else's narrative, she cautioned, her voice softer now, hinting at a depth of understanding. Walter inhaled deeply, attempting to frame his thoughts with clarity. I want to approach it with humility and respect. I want to listen and learn. Maybe through this process, I can find a strength I didn't know I had. Maybe I can become someone who isn't frightened of the truths that lie naked before him. Christine's expression flickered between skepticism and intrigue. And if it blows up in your face? What if you disrupt the lives of people who are already struggling? He swallowed hard, aware of the weight of those words. Then I need to accept that risk. I would rather face discomfort than remain stagnant. Maybe the vulnerability of this journey is what I've been craving all along. An uncomfortable silence enveloped them, then Christine nodded slowly, though her features were still clenched with concern. You know that this could take us down paths we never considered. You're ready for that? Yes, Walter declared, an unexpected buoyancy rising in him. I am. With that affirmation, she sighed, the tension between them settling into something resembling understanding. But the uncertainty still hovered, the stakes felt frighteningly high, yet exhilaratingly possible. As Walter emerged from their conversation, he felt lighter, as though embarking on a quest tinged with significance. He movingly recalled Maya's passionate speeches about her family's legacy. It hadn't been just history, it was a call for empathy, learning, and connection, yet he felt a deeper sense of foreboding. The next step would demand courage he wasn't sure he possessed. What truths would Maya unearth? What realities lay ahead that might shatter or reshape him? Later that night, when he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the questions tangled in his mind. With a profound weight, he realized he was more ready than ever to face everything: the unknowns, the histories, and perhaps, the unintended consequences of his decisions. What awaited him in that garden of truths? What concealed stories would his heart need to navigate? It was clear, the moment had come for him to step decisively into the uncomfortable embrace of reality. As dawn began to break, illuminating the room with a promise of new beginnings, Walter knew he stood at a pivotal crossroads. Little did he know, that the deeper he dug, the more he might uncover about himself and the price that might demand. Would he emerge transformed, or would his quest to connect lead to painful revelations about who he thought he was? The time had indeed come to face the unknown. Walter's feet touched the ground with a newfound urgency as the morning sun filtered through the blinds, a soft herald of the impending conversations. A swell of resolve brushed away the lingering shadows of uncertainty. He had decided, today would mark the beginning of a journey that promised both peril and revelation. After a whirlwind of distracting activities, Walter settled at his cluttered kitchen table, where stacks of papers consisting of his research on marginalized histories lay sprawled about. Yet now, it felt like mere window dressing for a deeper transcendental task. He needed to craft a way to approach Maya, to assure her of his sincerity, to honor the stories she carried so diligently. His first step was to frame a message that conveyed genuine intent. He typed slowly at first, agonizing over his words. Hi Maya, I've been thinking about some things. I really want to learn your grandmother's story. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, wrestling with the gravity of his intentions. He yearned for connection but feared imposing. Would she find his request trivial, or would she recognize it as a heartfelt outreach? After several rewrites, a tentative email left his inbox, igniting both hope and worry. Walter could almost hear his heart tap dancing in anticipation. Would she respond with enthusiasm, or would she brush him off, tired of the eyes trained on the tragedies of her past. He couldn't shake the creeping doubt that threatened to overshadow his resolve. This process, delving into someone else's emotional history, carried a weight that felt disconcerting. It was inevitable. He was standing at the border of vulnerability. What would Maya see when she looked at him? A researcher clinging to the coattails of others suffering for academic gain? The day dragged painfully until a notification pinged on his phone, pulling him from the haze of his worries. Maya had replied. "Hi Walter, I'm glad you want to hear about my grandmother. It's a rich story filled with struggles and triumphs, but I just want to be clear, it's not all sunshine. Let us meet. I'll tell you what you need to know." He breathed deeply, a mix of relief and apprehension washing over him. The very act of her willingness ignited something profound within him, a whisper of connection. In seeing his own privilege reflected through the lens of Maya's narrative, he hoped to unearth not only her grandmother's journey but his masked self as well. Later that week, they agreed to meet at a small park, a meeting punctuated by chirping birds and children playing in the background. As he waited, Walter's mind raced with uncertainties. Could he indeed approach this subject with the humility he desired? Would his presence unsettle Maya, or perhaps honor the lineage she so proudly embraced? When she arrived, Walter noticed the slight shift in her posture. Something in her demeanor hinted at wariness, yet also an eagerness to reclaim her story. They exchanged polite greetings, but it was the moment their eyes met that he felt the weight of what they were both bringing to the table. "Thank you for seeing me," Walter ventured, spinning his thoughts into words with care. "I really want to understand your grandmother's experiences. They matter, and I want to honor that." Maya studied him for a moment, as if gauging the sincerity behind his statement. "It's not just about history," she said, her voice steady. "It's about the heartache, the fight, the legacy. Are you ready for that?" The chill of her words pierced through him, unleashing the gravity of the journey he was beginning. Could he bear the weight she carried? Could he shoulder her truth without faltering? "I think so," he replied, pooling his courage into his voice, but an unsettling doubt gnawed at the edges of his certainty. As their conversation unfolded amidst the surrounding life of the park, Walter sensed a unique bond forming. But each story she shared carried the potential to unveil not only Maya's reality but also the uncomfortable truths he had long buried. With each revelation, he understood, came a personal reckoning. One that would challenge everything he thought he knew about himself. What lay ahead felt like a labyrinth woven with history, struggle, and illumination. The deeper he descended into Maya's narrative, the more questions would arise about his own life choices. Would this path reveal essential truths or shatter the carefully constructed image he had of himself? Under the expansive sky, Walter could almost hear a call beckoning from the unknown, hinting at the next chapter of his evolving narrative. Would he have the strength to confront the echoes of his past while navigating the terrain of Maya's profound experiences? As they sat beneath the sprawling branches of a sturdy oak, Walter felt the vibrant tapestry of life stories beginning to unfurl around them. Maya's gaze held an intensity that grounded him while simultaneously sending tendrils of uncertainty through his thoughts. This was not just an interview, it was a delicate dance of trust and revelation. Maya began with her grandmother's childhood, weaving in anecdotes of resilience and hardship. Her voice carried the weight of generations, each word steeped in emotions that were raw and revealing. As Walter listened, he sensed the landscape of her narrative shifting. Her grandmother had endured such immense adversity, yet found ways to assert her strength in the face of overwhelming challenges. Walter leaned forward, captivated but acutely aware of the personal stakes involved. How did she find the strength to keep going? He asked, genuinely curious. He needed to explore these elements, not just for his research but for his understanding of human tenacity. Maya's eyes flickered as she considered his question. It was the stories, Walter. Every hardship became a lesson, and she passed that wisdom down. It's why I think it's crucial to tell these stories. To keep the legacy alive. Her words struck a chord, and he felt the familiarity of that passion igniting within himself. It was the very essence of why he had entered this field, the belief that history could illuminate not only the past but also the present. Yet, there was something deeper at play. Walter felt a sudden swell of ambition, a desire not just to research but to create a platform for voices like Maya's. How often had he brushed past the advantages of his position, taking for granted the gravity that stories of struggle could hold. He could almost taste the bitterness of reckoning in the air. With every account, every triumph and struggle she articulated, he began to confront his own perceived inadequacies. "You said it's not all sunshine, Maya," he reminded her, needing to grasp the full spectrum of experiences. "What were the shadows?" Maya turned away, flicking her gaze toward the children playing nearby. He realized, in that moment, that her hesitation mirrored something he had avoided for too long. Memories buried in his own past contorted like shadows, threatening to slither into the open. "I think she was afraid," Maya finally murmured. Afraid of being forgotten, afraid of her pain being glossed over as just another story. Walter felt a shiver trace the nape of his neck. He understood that fear all too well because it was one that he quietly faced each day. That fear of obscurity of his work and identity fading into the vast landscape of the forgotten began to entwine with Maya's truths. He suddenly recognized the connection between their paths more profoundly than before. "Maya, I think we share something in this," he started, his heart racing as he broached the subject. "I've been grappling with my own history. It's easy for me to seek out these stories from a distance, but maybe they resonate with parts of me I've ignored." He saw a faint flicker of understanding in her eyes, an acknowledgement of his admission. But could she grasp the gravity of his inner turmoil? Could he articulate this burgeoning realization without seeming self-indulgent? Their conversation deepened, and Walter felt a churning mix of empowerment and vulnerability. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, he became acutely aware that the weight of this moment was not just about uncovering Maya's grandmother's legacy, it was about revealing his own hidden narrative. "Will you tell me more about her fears? We need to give voice to those echoes," he pressed, desperation creeping into his tone. Maya hesitated, her expression revealing the barriers she herself struggled to cross. He was asking her not only to share a painful truth but to entrust him with the key to understanding her complexities. How could he navigate this delicate exchange? The rise of apprehension in his chest reminded him that the journey ahead promised to unveil as much about his own character as it did about Maya's lineage. Then, as if unearthing a dormant truth, a question seeped into his mind: what if he could transform their shared stories into a powerful narrative that could transcend his initial intentions? But it was a daunting prospect, fraught with challenges that stretched beyond his control. In that moment, he understood, he was on the precipice, waiting to dive into a reflection that threatened to reshape everything he believed in. Behind every revelation about Maya's past stood the looming specter of his own truths, waiting. "Walter," Maya's voice broke through his spiraling thoughts, anchoring him once more. "Are you truly ready to face what we uncover together?" The weight of her question hung heavy in the air, and at that moment, Walter realized the path ahead was far more perilous than he had anticipated. Would he have the courage to confront the shadows woven into his own story as he immersed himself deeper into hers? Walter's mind raced, the moment stretching beyond time as he grappled with Maya's question. What did ready mean? Was he prepared to delve into the complexities of her grandmother's story and, in turn, his own? There was a palpable tension in the air. The sunlight filtering through the oak was emblematic of the clarity he sought, yet it also cast shadows brimming with uncertainty. "Ready?" he echoed, the word tasting foreign on his tongue. "I've spent so long digging through other people's stories, I've never considered the fissures in my own." The admission felt liberating yet terrifying, as if he were exposing a part of himself that had long been safeguarded. Maya shifted slightly, her curiosity piqued, prompting him to reflect deeply. Each moment spent with her seemed to peel away layers that he had meticulously constructed around his reality, the protective barriers erected to shield him from past wounds. "I think your grandmother's fears resonate beyond her life," Walter continued, feeling emboldened by their connection. "They reflect a universal truth about legacy. It makes me wonder what I've buried simply to survive." The intensity of the words flowed as he laid bare the battle between his professional role and personal identity. Maya's expression softened, unlocking something dormant between them. "You're not just an observer," Walter. You're part of the story, too, whether you accept it or not. Her acknowledgement made his heart race. It was exhilarating yet terrifying to confront the potential of his own narrative, something that had been overshadowed by the pursuit of others' tales. For too long, he had hidden behind the veil of academic detachment, a safe distance that now felt precarious. With quiet urgency, he pressed, "What if we were to intertwine our stories, Maya? Yours is rich, layered, and full of lessons. Mine, well, it's been a hidden landscape of fear and ambition. What would happen if we both illuminated our truths?" The proposition felt radical, a merging of vulnerabilities that could evoke judgment or, perhaps, a shared strength. She looked at him thoughtfully, the weight of her family's history unfolding between them. "It could change everything," she replied softly, revealing a glimmer of apprehension as she considered the implications. "But with that, we might also expose some raw edges." Walter sensed her hesitation, mirroring his own worries. Would this endeavor push them into uncomfortable territories? But that discomfort carried with it the scent of potential, the promise of deeper understanding. What if the risks they took could foster healing, not just for Maya but for himself as well? "Let us find a way to do it together," he suggested, voice steadier than he felt. "But I want you to lead. This is your legacy, I'm merely here to help amplify it. I don't want to overshadow your truth with my own struggles." Maya's eyes sparkled with a blend of gratitude and disbelief. "I need to work through my own fears first. I can share my grandmother's voice, but I must ensure I'm ready to reach for my own." His instincts surged at her words. She was exploring paths he had neglected, but there was also a challenge lurking in their dialogue. Could he truly step back and let her illuminate her own struggles while unveiling his at the same time? "Then I'll be here for you as you break those barriers down," he offered, determination coursing through him. "But I also want to face my ghosts, too. This exchange must be reciprocal. Only by confronting our shadows can we shed some light on the legacies we create." Maya nodded, a new resolve blossoming in her demeanor. It felt as if they had both committed to a pact, one that would forever alter the course of their narratives, merging them into something unexpected yet essential. As they lingered in the golden light of late afternoon, Walter felt a tremor of anticipation wash over him. Thoughts swirled about the potential ahead, the stories they could co-create, the transformations waiting to erupt from this amalgamation of their pasts. "Let us explore each other's histories page by page," he proposed, their connection deepening with the commitment to embark on this journey together. "I have a feeling it'll unravel truths we've yet to confront." The air crackled with possibility, a promise etched in the fading sunlight. A narrative interwoven with courage awaited them, yet, just before the sun dipped below the horizon, a new thought intruded relentlessly in Walter's mind. If they began to peel back the layers of pain, what unexpected darkness might they unleash? Would it be a revelation or merely additional shadows to confront? In that moment, as they prepared to leap into this uncharted territory, Walter couldn't shake one last question: was he ready to confront the truths hiding in the depths of his own illuminating journey? The silence hung thick between them, filled with unspoken questions and the weight of their commitment. Walter felt a surge of energy, but beneath it lay a current of fear. What if the process didn't lead to healing? What if, in their quest for truth, they stumbled upon scars too deep to mend? As dusk settled, painting the world in hues of indigo, Walter made a mental note to confront his own shadows before they began this journey. In his years as a storyteller, he had refined the craft of revealing others' truths without exposing his own. Now, that shield felt brittle. He had to navigate his fears, not only as a means for personal growth but also to offer authentic support to Maya. "What do you want to uncover first?" he asked, breaking the stillness, eager to redirect the conversation toward her. Maya's brow furrowed as she considered his question. "My grandmother's experiences during the civil rights movement were significant. The courage it took for her to share her voice, it's powerful, but do I have the same strength?" The admission resonated within him. He recognized their shared hesitation, the fear of inadequacy. "You're stepping into her legacy, Maya. It's okay to feel apprehensive. Embrace it. That's how your strength will grow. But what if I fail? What if my voice isn't strong enough to honor hers? The sincerity in her gaze sent a jolt through him, and he realized she was grappling with an internal battle he, too, faced. Failure is part of the journey, not the destination, he said, trying to impart some clarity. True growth often arises from our missteps. Let us redefine failure as part of our learning curve. Maya nodded, though doubt lingered in her eyes. Walter felt a protective instinct surge within him. It reminded him of his determination to lay bare his own vulnerabilities. I'll bear witness to your disclosures, but I also need to be accountable for my shadows. We can break down those barriers together, each bearing the weight of our narratives, he asserted. Facing our fears, together. She repeated, as though pondering the weight of the pact they were forming. Yes. But I need to start. I can't lead from behind a facade. My history, it's convoluted, but it's part of who I am. Only by unveiling my own story can I be fully here for yours. She looked intrigued, and he could see her curiosity replace some of her apprehension. What don't you want to confront? I've buried deep feelings of inadequacy, Walter confessed, the admission seeming raw yet necessary. I've spent years projecting a facade of success while internally battling self-doubt. Each time I sit down to write, a voice whispers, who are you to tell this story? Maya's expression softened, and for a moment, their fears felt interconnected. Maybe your grandmother's struggles are intertwined with yours. Perhaps we're not so different at all, she suggested, her voice barely above a whisper. He inhaled sharply, realizing the depth of her insight. Their narratives, although distinct, shared common threads of resilience. You're right. Perhaps the threads of our legacies can strengthen each other, he replied, a newfound determination surfacing. The night surrounded them, cloaked in stars that seemed to pulse with possibilities. Walter knew this was just the beginning. The past held the key to healing, but it also carried risks that could upend their carefully amassed lives. As they sat together in the cool night air, a thought uncoiled in his mind: what would it mean to view these fears not just as burdens but as powerful catalysts for change? Suddenly, a challenge crystallized in his chest. What if confronting his past allowed him to help Maya transcend her own limitations? Maya, he said tentatively, what if we tell our stories not just for ourselves but to inspire others? Can we be brave enough to share our truths openly? Her eyes sparkled with a blend of hope and tentative courage. That might be the most important story we could tell. The conversation hung in the air, thick with potential, the darkness now feeling less intimidating. But as Walter looked into Maya's eyes, a sense of urgency pierced through his determination. Could they face the complexities of their pasts without falling apart? Would they emerge whole on the other side, or would they instead fracture under the intensity of their revelations? The weight of uncharted emotions loomed large in the space between them, teasing him with the promise of both discovery and turmoil. One thing was clear: the evening had ignited a fire within, and they were now prepared to explore the depths of their stories, no matter how daunting it might be. What awaited them in that exploration of the past, and could they find the strength to rise together, or would they falter in the shadows of their histories? Days turned into weeks as Walter and Maya forged ahead, digging deeper not only into the soil of the garden but also into their intertwined histories. The deeper they dug, the clearer it became that the stories they were unearthing were more than artifacts of the past, they were illuminating paths to understanding themselves in the present. Walter's confidence burgeoned as he witnessed the profound connection of their stories unfurling in real time. With each object they unearthed a faded photograph, a tattered letter. He felt fragments of his own identity materialize from the shadows that had once obscured his path. He realized that privilege, while a heavy cloak, could be transformed into a vehicle for change. He began to see his journey as one not of self-interest but of collective growth. One afternoon, nestled among the fragrant azaleas, Walter presented his idea to Maya, a collaborative narrative encompassing their discoveries and experiences. What if we create a platform to share these stories? He proposed, excitement thrumming in his voice. Not just for us but to inspire others grappling with their own legacies. His eyes shone with a clarity that he hadn't felt in years. Maya's face sparkled with a blend of disbelief and courage. "You're serious?" she asked, her voice brimming with hope. "Absolutely," Walter affirmed, recently free from the shackles of doubt. "This is about more than you, more than me. It's about illuminating the shared struggles that shape who we are. Highlighting what has been traditionally marginalized." With every exchange, their collaborative efforts had grown into a rich tapestry of history and discovery, a dialogue that merged their journeys. They envisioned a series of exhibitions where both personal and societal narratives would blend, illuminating the resilience within struggle. However, with heightened ambition came the stark reality of their stagnant lives outside the garden. Walter could feel the pressure from home tightening once more. Christine's skepticism had evolved into pointed criticism. "You think this is some noble savior project, but it's a reckless endeavor, Walter," she snapped one evening, defensively guarding the stability she felt slipping away. "Why can't you just focus on your work? Why does this need to be about someone else's pain?" Those words stung, but they also catalyzed Walter's resolve. The collision of his private exploration and familial expectations came to a head when he faced Christine, unwavering this time. "This isn't about you or me, it's about the stories that have been silenced. I can no longer ignore that part of myself just to keep the peace. I need to embrace change." The tension in the air thickened, a potent reminder of the challenges that lay ahead. Yet Walter emerged with a solid confidence, understanding that he was no longer a passive observer in his life. He had fought through his fears, confrontations, and resistance. The clarity he felt while working with Maya was now a steady flame guiding him. On the day of their exhibition launch, Walter stood in an elegantly restored barn bursting with artifacts, stories woven into every corner. Guests mingled, the air vibrant with energy and camaraderie. Maya delivered a stirring speech celebrating her grandmother's legacy, her voice carrying weight and purpose. Walter watched her, awash in admiration, as she eloquently shared her truths, her fears dissipating in the light of her courage. In that moment, Walter recognized his own transformation. He had conquered his insecurities, assuming a leadership role that had once felt unattainable. This was validation of his competence, a manifestation of growth not merely for himself but for those who needed their narratives elevated. As they concluded the exhibition, Walter and Maya received applause from the audience, their stories resonating long after the last words were spoken. The culmination of their efforts sealed not just a moment of triumph but marked the dawning of newfound partnerships and hopeful futures. Walter breathed in the joy around him, feeling anchored yet buoyant. The challenges he had faced transformed into stepping stones, where once lay confusion about legacy now presented clarity open through shared journeys. "I couldn't have done this without you," Walter said to Maya, holding her gaze with respect and camaraderie. She smiled, genuine this time. The insecurities of earlier days vanished. "We did this together." In the shimmering warmth of that collective success, Walter felt more like himself than ever before. His journey, a confluence of personal reawakening and shared legacy, had carved a new identity that felt authentic and uncompromising. The past would remain a part of him, but he embraced it now, not as a weight, but as a formidable foundation. Walter knew that change begins within, in confronting one's truths and learning to voice them fiercely. The garden had not just offered them relics of the past, it had birthed new possibilities for the future, where stories were not merely told but lived. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden hues upon their creation, Walter understood that he had not just discovered the legacies of others, but rather unearthed his standing now in full visibility, ready to inspire the world in ways he hadn't dared dream before. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your appreciation. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending below. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.